Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counsellor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counselling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. When I started this podcast, my goal was obviously to provide support for victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse. And to do that, I thought it's not just enough to, put the information out there and hope that it helps someone. I think it's really, really important to talk to other victims and survivors on this podcast, so that you guys know that you're not alone. It's so isolating, this type of abuse. And I decided that I was going to talk to people who have experienced this type of abuse, so that you guys know that you're not alone, and also so that you can hear their stories of how they've healed, the strategies that they've used, or just their experiences. So today I actually have a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and her name is Barbara. And Barbara very kindly offered to talk to us about her experience with narcissistic abuse and what that was like for her, and how she was able to move forward from that. But Barbara's not just a victim of narcissistic abuse. Of course, she's a survivor, but Barb has also chosen to use her experience to help other victims, because she's a counsellor, just like myself, and she also helps other victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse. Barbara is the founder of Self-Care Studio, which is a private therapy practice located in Shell Harbour, New South Wales in Australia. For all of you people listening from outside of Australia, she sees clients, though, from all over the world, online and in her private studio. And she's also a podcast host, and her podcast is called The Studio Chat. She has over 23 years of experience in the health and fitness industry, and she's dedicated her life to helping others transform their lives after facing significant trauma of her own, especially in a romantic relationship with a narcissist. So today I'd like to welcome Barb. Barb, thank you so much for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, and what a beautiful introduction, Nova. Thank you, and congratulations on this incredible podcast, which I know in the beginning, when you're hunting and looking for answers, I know your podcast is going to help so many people.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words, Barb. But I know that your story will also help victims and survivors as well. So, Barb, tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us your story. What happened to you that made you so passionate about helping other victims?
Yeah. Well, I guess it started off, let's just start the day I was born. And literally all this abuse started the day I was born. And I was born in 1980, and I was born in early August, but I was supposed to be arriving mid-October. So in the 1980s, I was very early. I came very quick, and I was 2 pounds.
My goodness.
And I was my parents' first child. My dad is a workaholic, and he's still here today. He's a workaholic, so he wasn't there, but my mum was all alone, and I got whisked away and was told she's 2 pounds, she has a 50-50 chance of living. And my dad just walked into the hospital room, said to my mother, if that child is handicapped or looks deformed or there's anything wrong with her, I don't want to have anything to do with her. And then he leaves. So anyone listening, introduction to my father, he is a full-blown, I would say, a psychopath.
Yeah.
He's a bit heavier than a narcissist, I'd imagine, but I was a little girl that idolized my father. I was daddy's little girl, and I thought my dad was just the coolest person in the world until I guess I was older, until the mask dropped many times. But when it's your normal, you don't know what's in your family. It's normal. Yeah. And I think, to be honest, the first time I started to, I'm sure my body, I could see the red flags, but I didn't know what red flags were. And it was in my early 20s is when the first time I kind of stood up to him and was like, actually, I don't like you as a person. And that was the first time I stood up to my father. So my journey of being who Barbara is I was someone as a kid that was always, I always would walk into a room and people would stare, and I'd have this energy, and I didn't, as a little girl, you don't know what to do with it. I was always the teacher's pet, and now looking back, I could see that they probably thought I was starved for love. I wanted people to love me. I had no love at home. And so I'd go to school and I'd really thrive at school. I was very popular, and I'd do all the sporting activities, and all the teachers liked me, and it was my safe place being at school.
Yep.
And then having a father like that, all the people around me were like him, because that was what I was drawn to. That's what I thought love was. So until I had my first serious boyfriend, when I was, always had like boyfriends, like you walk home from school and hold hands, that kind of stuff. But my first serious boyfriend would have been, oh gosh, I have to think back now. I was about 19, yeah. And he was, I've just written them down because I wanted to make sure I got this right in the podcast. So he was my first serious boyfriend. He was a narcissist. Then I got married to one. And then I had another 3 relationships after that. They were all narcissists as well. And every single one got worse. So when I was with that first partner, it was normal. Now looking back, I can see I didn't flinch. When I was with my ex-husband, it was very abusive on many forms, which we can go into a bit later. But that was kind of, oh, this is maybe not right. And then as I went down, it got worse, and the relationships got shorter, but they got more abusive as I went. And then that cycle for me stopped when I was 38.
Right. So it sounds like, Barb, you did what so many victims of child abuse do. So many adults who have a narcissistic parent find themselves in a relationship that mirrors that toxic parent. As you said earlier, that was your version of love. Love and abuse go hand in hand. Someone who abuses you makes you fight for every breadcrumb of love in inverted commas, and it sets you up for what relationships you find yourself in later on when you are an adult.
This was all normal. Like, to other people, I think if I look back and think of, I didn't know I was in one probably until this. Look, after my ex-husband, I had a relationship with one that started to really wave all these flags at me, but I didn't know what anything was. I didn't know what red flags were. I didn't really even know what narcissism was. But when I was with this guy and he kept lying, like, this was the big gaslighter, I would say. So this partner, it was the first time ever that I would be like, whose cigarette is that in the ashtray? Like, that's got red lipstick on it. That's not mine. And he'd be like, no, it's yours. Or like noticing fake tan on the sheets. And I would like hop into bed and be like, that's not mine. And he'd be like, no, it is. And I'd hop into bed going, oh, okay. So this was the first time that kind of stuff was present, that I was like, huh? But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. So many, many examples in that relationship of, like, literally I was going crazy. Like, I literally felt like, and then as that discard, and then they come around to, devalue, discard, and they come around to hoover you again. In that moment where they're really devaluing me, like, you're an idiot. No wonder no one wants to be with you. You're dumb and you're crazy and all this stuff. And I was like,
yeah,
maybe I am. Like, everyone else seems to have normal relationships, and I keep, maybe it's me. And to anyone listening to this, like, it's not as obvious. If you've been brought up with a parent, it's not going to hit you in the face. It's not going to be an aha moment. It's hard work to realize the little things that turn into big things. Like, but when I was in it, I honestly, hand on heart, I knew, maybe this isn't healthy, but I had no idea the ride that I was in for, and that whole cycle. And it changed my life, knowing that, wow, they've only got one playbook. And once you nail that playbook, everything is like, I can have my power back now. They're not as smart as what they think they are. They've only got one way of doing something. And once you understand that and know that it's not about you, you're such a beautiful human. Everything good you see in them is only you reflected back on them. Yeah,
absolutely. So you have been conditioned to, they're pretty overt sort of things, aren't they? Lipstick on a cigarette, fake tan on your sheets. But you, like all victims, were conditioned without even knowing it to minimize how bad those things were that were right in front of you. They were out there, they were overt, but he had clearly lowered your boundaries so much and brainwashed you with that gaslighting, which this brainwashing takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight. He'd gotten you to the stage where you were actually looking at that and taking some kind of credence in what he was telling you, which is, no, Barb, you're imagining things. You're crazy. And that's what we need to get across to people, I guess, who haven't experienced this, is that when they're telling you these things, if you haven't experienced, you just don't know how or what it's like when this insidious brainwashing has destroyed your instincts over time. It's just so hard to articulate to people, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think the hard thing too is you are isolated. So you don't really have anyone saying to you, oh, Barb, that's not right, or that's not okay. And then with the cycle, when you do decide to break it off with them and then you get back with them, which I have many times, you tell less and less people. So you isolate yourself even more to the point where this abuse can keep happening. And it really, it disconnects you from your body so much, because those funny feelings in your tummy, or the butterflies in your tummy, or the off feeling, or, he's texting another girl. You're right every time. But I would always go, oh, Barbara, stop being silly. You don't know. God, stop being insecure. Like, you are insecure anyway. So stop being silly.
And that's those thoughts of yours where you're saying stop being silly to yourself. That's got nothing to do with, I just want everyone out there to know, it's got nothing to do with a lack of intelligence or weakness, because this is what we call cognitive dissonance, and we'll talk about that at a later time. But this is your brain's way of actually surviving the abuse that you can't even define as abuse. And if he had have done those things, like the lipstick on the cigarette, etc., right at the start, you would have some kind of comeback. But because your boundaries have been worn down so gradually, it works, and you start to blame yourself and believe what they're telling you, which is it's your fault.
Yeah, absolutely. But my first couple of serious relationships, especially with my ex-husband, he didn't show any signs of that. It was really hidden. It was really hidden. And he'd say little cheap shots about my body or how I looked or little things. Because, how it works is when you meet someone like this, they are so into you. It's that whole love bombing. They're like so obsessed with you. I always talk about with my clients, good morning, beautiful, good night, beautiful. Like our boundaries and our standards are so low. It's like, oh my God, he texts me in the morning. Oh my God, he texts me at night. Now today Barbara goes, whoop-de-woo, who cares? That is, but I know in the height of this, if I had met someone and he was really paying me so much attention and like text messaging me every morning and night, that was so high on my list. Like I had no idea of what I really wanted. I hadn't given myself the time of what do I want in a person, what values, what beliefs, what's important. Just like, oh, this person's paying attention to me. Well, hey, you must be the person.
Yeah, but it feels good. This feels good. They can't just come out and abuse you straight away. So they've got to hook you in and good morning, princess. I've been thinking about you all day. Good night, my sweet prince, or, because it's not gender specific. But these things make you feel good. The dopamine is flowing. And why would you think that someone that is being so nice to you is pretending to be someone else? It's just not something that crosses your mind.
Yeah, and that's the small things. This is why I want someone to listen to as well. With one of the partners that I've been with, they move really fast too. That's the other thing. But we went on a date and he was bragging to me about how cool his bachelor pad was and how great his apartment was, because he came to pick me up. And actually, when I opened the door, he kind of looked into my house and was like, oh, you've got good taste or something. I thought, that's a weird thing for someone to say. Like, oh, I like your furniture. Anyway, and all during dinner, he was bragging about how cool his bachelor pad is and how he's got good taste like me and how he's got nice furniture. And then a week or so or 2 weeks later, when I ended up going back to his house, I walked in and was like, I actually had to stop myself from laughing. Barbara, don't be so rude. And I was like, this is all crappy stuff. So it's like their words don't match their actions. And that was one big thing I noticed is like especially in the beginning when they talk the big game and this is what I mean, these little off moments, the little off moments where I couldn't care less if whoever I would meet had something or nothing. It doesn't matter. But the fact that he was like, I've got this and it's so amazing. And I walked in and I actually went, like I went to laugh and then covered my mouth. And he was like, what's wrong? I was like, oh, nothing. And in my head I was looking around going, A, he has no furniture, but B, it's like a frat house. Like it's nothing to
Yeah. Did it just out of curiosity, did it kind of cross your mind, being an empath, that maybe he does think this is good, and he's got such a low I guess standard in that he's never had much, that maybe this is his nice apartment, and kind of push you towards maybe helping him. Was that maybe a thing, or was it just...
I actually felt sorry for him, I think.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's bad. And then I put it on to me, as we do, oh my God, I'm judging. Oh, I'm such a bad person. Oh my gosh. Maybe this is really a beautiful apartment for him because he's so hard done by, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
So common,
Yes, very common. And woe is me. And that's how I got hooked in every time. And I say hooked in because everyone that I met, the abuse got worse and the relationship got shorter for me to go, oh, hang on. And what I mean by that is when I would meet, and they all had the same playbook. So they all, whenever I met each of these men, we'd talk about, what do you want, or, what are you looking for? And then I would, you say what you're looking for. And then they'd be like, oh, look, I don't normally tell someone this. And each of these guys has a massive sob story. One of them included an abuse from a family member, which was really sick and horrible, and like really big things. An adult I've just kind of met them and they're sharing their deepest, darkest secrets with me. And I'm like,
they must really trust you.
Yeah. And I would be like, I'm trying not to sound cynical when
you sound as cynical in hindsight as
I know.
you want.
I know.
Because when you look back, it does sound ridiculous, but at the time you don't know. You don't have those tools.
No. So in the moment, everyone that I met would be like, it was the same playbook. They'd be like, oh, Barbara, I've been through this. Oh, my God, it's so horrible. And I'd be like, oh, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And then what I would do is share the hard stuff I have been through with my father, or about how my father would always comment about my body image and how I looked and whatever. And so I would share with them my genuine, honest, deepest, darkest insecurities. And then what they would do is, right, that's how I'm going to really hurt Barbara. When I devalue her, I'm going to talk about how she looks. I'm going to talk about everything that and that's what they do. Yeah. So they they kind of bring you in as, here's something I've been through and it's really traumatic, and it's, and I feel sorry because there's some people out in the world that have been through that stuff, but just the guys I've been with would have this story of this is what happened. And I literally remember for each of them, I'd put my hand on my heart and I'd be like, it would take my breath away. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you've been through that. And then I would share that stuff with them. And then the conversation would always end off by, I've never met anyone like you, Barbara. Oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, of course not. Your ego kind of goes, of course not. And then then they say, oh no, you're my person. I've never met anyone. I've never felt this way before. And hey, he's saying this probably 8 other women that week. I didn't know that. Yeah. But when you hear from someone that has just shared something really big with you, and then you've shared something back, you've got this connection, and then they say to you, you're my person.
Yeah, well, we know now that it's a weapon, isn't it? It's how they manipulate you. I'll share with you. You'll feel deeply honoured that I've shared that stuff with you, but the real goal is to get you to reveal all of your intimate secrets so they can mirror you back, and so that you'll be grateful that they felt they could share that with you. And of course, so you have that deep connection with them. But it's really about gathering data to use against you at a later date, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and then honestly, really closely around that, there'd always be other women. There'd always be other women that'd go out and would be out, and they'd see them and the energy would feel weird, or they'd always have heaps of friends that were girls, or text messages all the time from girls, and it was just like, there's always a lot of women surrounding them, or a close friend that they work with or something. Like, it was always something. And this is, again, only my story, but that's what I'm sharing today, is the guy that I married, or the ones that I dated seriously, always had women around them. Yeah.
And if you said anything, which I shouldn't assume, but I'm pretty sure you would have, because it's just a normal thing, isn't it? Why are you always talking to other women? Because you feel disrespected. You would have got back from him, oh, you're so insecure. Can't I have women friends? But it's the way they do it, and they do it intentionally. Of course, the volume, it's not normal, guys, for everyone who's listening, and it's disrespectful, but they know this. But it's a lose-lose situation for you. If you say anything, you're insecure.
Yeah, and it would almost be that once their guard was down, their mask had slipped, and I was still oblivious to this, by the way. Whenever we'd go to a barbecue or a party or a dinner, I'd be sitting in front of them, and they would just be looking at other women all the time and not me. I also dated a guy, he was the last one, when we went out for a coffee, because we were working together, went out for a coffee, and he flirted with the waitress and asked for her number while I was sitting at the table. And I was like, is this happening right now?
How did he palm that off to you as the truth?
Oh, he just said, he was just so out there. He was just like, if I want to date her, you've been annoying me lately. So,
okay.
yeah, you've been annoying me lately, and if you just keep your mouth shut and do everything I tell you, you'll get everything you want. But until then, I quite liked her, and I actually enjoyed watching you squirm in your seat.
Wow. So he is really overt.
I need to probably share this because it will help other people. So he actually was my therapist.
He was actually your therapist. You were paying him for therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Talk about unethical and overstepping boundaries.
Found myself in that situation, and sometimes we need to talk about these things to normalize it, and where these people can hide. They can be in the church, they can be like really good people in our community, and I don't share it often. I share it with my clients when and if it's needed, but it's something I don't publicly talk about too much.
I hear so often that from my clients that they've been abused, not in a romantic sense, but in other ways by a therapist. But, that's why we have those boundaries, because you've got someone so vulnerable in front of you who you are helping. So, there's a strong possibility that they could, be fall for your moves, I guess you could say, with the right words, because you are listening to them. You're validating their feelings. And for a therapist to take advantage of that is beyond despicable. Look, thank you so much for sharing that, Barb. You really wanted to let people know that with your story, that these abusers, these toxic narcissists who prey on vulnerable people, they are everywhere. But we're going to leave it there, because I know that, the legal ramifications of that were traumatic, and I know that that's all been taken care of now. But you wanted to focus more on the abuse and talk to people about, what that was like for you. And I guess just to warn people that these people are in all positions, and, that they don't come with a big sign on their forehead, do they?
No, and thank you for just allowing me to share a little bit, so it's enough for people to understand that they're hidden everywhere. Someone that I really trusted really took advantage of me, and it's all been taken care of. So just thank you, because it's really important that people know the story.
Yeah, no, thank you, because I know that was, a very difficult thing for you to share. But you know what, Bob, if that's happened to you, then I would imagine that it has happened to other people who might think that they are the only ones. So, yeah, you're really validating their trauma. So, Barb, tell us a little bit more about your light bulb moment. Tell us about the light bulb moment when you recognized a pattern here, and what was that like for you?
The light bulb moment was, I think I was just felt so depleted and so defeated, and just so I didn't know who I was anymore. For example, I'd go out with some friends and they'd say, "Oh, look, we're picking up a bottle of wine on the way home. What do you like?" I couldn't tell anyone what I liked anymore. I couldn't tell anyone what hobbies I liked. If you had asked me, "Barbara, what do you enjoy? What do you like doing?" I couldn't give you the answer, because I was too worried about what other people would think. So I'd always want to find out, "Oh, what do you want? Or where do you want to go for dinner?"
Yeah.
So it was kind of feeling, I can't do this anymore. And also just emotionally, physically so defeated and just so energetically drained that I was like, I can't do this again. I need to talk to someone, or I need to find out what's happening. And I think part of it was, then I started to research. I just started to research, why do I get these feet, good old Google, why do I feel like my partner's talking to another girl or texting another girl? What does it mean? And I just started to go down this rabbit hole of asking Google heaps of questions. And then I started these narcissist YouTube videos, and I started to watch some YouTube videos and educate myself. And then I was like, oh, yeah, he does that. Oh, I've had that. There's a name for that. Oh, triangulation. Oh, because triangulation happened to me all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, maybe it isn't me. And then obviously I knew my relationship with my father because I had cut him out of my life when I was 21 was the last time that I've seen or spoken to my dad. Yeah. And that was when he left my mother. And we had an argument, and he says, you either accept my new, it was a lot of things, you either accept my new girlfriend or you don't. But my dad had, in my eyes, changed to a horrible man. But he'd always been that person.
He'd always been a horrible man, but that was the eye-opener after you done your research.
Yeah, so at 21, that was the moment where I looked him in the eyes and said, no. And he says, I'm going to cut you out of the will, I'm going to cut you out, you're going to get nothing. And I was like, because he's always about money. And I was like, okay. And I haven't seen or talked to him since. And, I will always, I've done so much work on that, and I understand that, he is his own person. He's been the way that he is, and he was operating the only way that he knew. But having him, my choice, out of my life is the best decision I've made, because I can be my own person, and I can learn, and I can grow, and I can break all these wiring patterns, all these patterns of behavior that I've learned as a kid. Yeah. And now I've rewired them. So it was a combination of at 21 discovering that and breaking free from that. Then it was a discovery when I was 38 to being like, I'm so broken. And I mean broken in a good way, as in like, oh, I can't do this anymore. This keeps happening. Yeah. I want to start looking for answers. I need answers. I need to know why, because all my friends aren't doing this. Like, why am I the one that this is always happening to? So YouTube helped me. This is before podcasts really came out, YouTube. And then that book that I've talked about, it's called Psychopath Free. That was another aha. Oh my gosh, there's names for this. There's a cycle for this. And then I went and saw a psychologist. And the psychologist was really good because it was really working on who was Barbara. And it really helped me. I did that for about 3 years. In consistent therapy of learning about why I think the way I do, why I act the way I do. And it was all about myself, because I didn't need to learn about these people anymore, because I'd learned about them. I knew where it came from. Yeah. I've healed that. I knew the patterns. I knew all the partners that had done the certain things. And then the final cherry on the top was, how do I heal? How do I heal Barbara? How do I work on myself? And that's when I went and saw a really trusted psychologist that walked me through that and helped me with those tools.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you found someone that was able to help you with what you've been through and to recognize your trauma. It's not always easy to find someone who gets this, type of abuse. And, as you would know, many people who come to see me, and I'm assuming you're the same, many people find that because it's so hard to articulate, and often there is no one huge thing. It's just been this lifetime of normalizing abuse. It's your normal. It's insidious, this type of abuse, and it's really hard to find a therapist who actually gets it. So I'm so glad that you were able to do that. So, Barb, you would know that you're what we call an ACON. You are an adult child of a narcissist. Now, anyone can be a victim of a narcissist. They find people who don't have trauma, who are successful, really happy with themselves. They find that a challenge. It'll be such fun to break them down. But people who have core wounds are even more susceptible. Children of narcissists like you, because this is your normal, and you, without knowing it, you veer away from people who are healthy, because toxic relationships like that are familiar to you. So tell us about your healing journey? What did your healing journey look like? Because I know when, and as I talk about in my book, Fake Love, everyone wants the handbook on how to heal yesterday. They know who and what their abuser is, and it's like, okay, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I want to, and understandably, I want to heal quick. But it takes time to undo that sort of brainwashing and to discover, as you did, who you were meant to be before you were abused. You have to find out who you are before this person told you who you are supposed to be to boost their ego. So tell us about your healing journey when you hit that rock bottom.
Mm-hmm. So my healing journey has been all modalities. It's been my mind, it's been my body, it's been a bit of spiritual stuff in there too, because remember what I said in the beginning was I was born into this. So I didn't know any different. So I've never had permission to be myself around anyone, and I didn't even know who I was. So for me, when I had that last abusive relationship at 38, and now I'm 44 in a couple of weeks, I was like, okay, I need this time. Because you always romanticize, oh, the next one will be the one, or I don't know. I just had this thing that I always had to maybe have someone. I had bouts of being single. I didn't jump from guy to guy. I would have a year and a half being single. But part of my healing journey is when I turned 38 and I had this epiphany of, oh, okay, all my light bulbs are going off. Okay, I needed this time, and I've been single for 7 years now. I've needed every single minute and second to sit with it, to process everything, to go through every relationship I've had and be like, that's interesting. Yeah. And also be honest with myself that there was always one in there. The guy that I moved here for, I had such a trauma bond to him that, you know everything they've done wrong, but you just think, if I was to bump into them yesterday, all those feelings would come back. But you logically know that this person's not right for you, so it doesn't make sense to you. Yeah. So I knew time. A big thing for me has been time, to not cover it up with caring for someone, like romantically, caring for someone else, loving someone else. I've had to love myself. Yeah. I've had to get to know myself. I've had to be like, who am I? What do I like? And that's what I mean with my brain. Like every time I'm overthinking or people pleasing, I'm really big in writing things down. So it was a really big thing for me, rather than getting anxious or overly worked. And I didn't experience anxiety till my last relationship. I had girlfriends that would talk about anxiety, but, when I was with my last partner, I just had moments where I couldn't breathe, and I didn't realize what that was, and now I know what it was. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that my body too would tell me. So I had to start listening to my body and start to be like, okay, what makes me feel good? What foods make me feel good? What foods don't make me feel good? What makes me feel anxious?
And then find out.
Yeah, I had to almost like my healing journey is like, try this, try that, work on my mind, work on my body, but also living in a different country too, and just be still and just open my eyes. Who am I surrounding myself with? Who makes me feel good? Who doesn't make me feel good? And almost like, really sitting with myself and working out, like, what do I want? And I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but I was always on the highs or the lows or the drama, and always going around that cycle that I never had the moment to stop and just be like, I just want to be myself.
Chaos and drama would have been your normal. It was not interesting, but I picked up on the fact that you said you had, a number of toxic, abusive relationships, including, 20 years of abuse from your father. But I used to work in child protection, and it would always sadden me to go out to a job and when there was a notification of horrible domestic violence. Now I know there was one abuser and one victim reacting to that abuse. But, very, very toxic and just horrific for the children. The abusive parent would be screaming abuse at us as the workers, because most of the time they'd had experience with child protection. And the children would just sit there happily doing a jigsaw or, colouring in. A normal child who hadn't witnessed that sort of abuse in their childhood would probably be, scared and crying, his mum or dad screaming at these strangers. These children just played happily. They didn't bat an eyelid. And to hear you say that you've had these abusive relationships, but other people would talk about anxiety and you're like, No, it wasn't really till the third one I started to, get those physical symptoms. And what that suggests to me is that your threshold or your normal was so abusive, your threshold for abuse was so high that you're like those children I used to see at the jobs we were called out to that just normalized this. So you had to get to a really, really bad place that was over and above that to start really feeling the symptoms of being that victim of abuse.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is staying in relationships. Like my healing journey has been being able to reflect on staying in relationships way longer than what I should have. Like knowing that, and again, I see people in healthy relationships, but it's just a thing where honor yourself. Like I knew maybe near the end of all of them, this isn't good, but you'd stay because you'd have those glimpses of good times. Yeah. But it was just like, I couldn't even tell you. It's one thing I do with my clients now. It's like, okay, if you want to meet a partner, tell me some qualities. And everyone looks at me exactly how I would have looked at them at the beginning of my healing journey. I don't know, I've never thought about it. Or how can we know what we want to move towards if we don't know what it looks like or feels like? We'll talk about it. And everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's just one simple thing.
Yeah, but the thing is that we've got to remember with narcissists, and we know they are everywhere, and this is what's so important to take it slowly, because the abuse never starts. It's never obvious at the beginning. No one is going to come out and abuse you straight away. They've got to be nice to hook you in. So, guys, for those of you who are listening, please take the next relationship slowly so you have time to see the red flags, because they would never keep control of you or hook you in or get you trauma bonded if they abused you to begin with.
Yeah, I've got one tip actually that this was before I had therapy. This particular partner that I moved here for, that was the hardest one for me to break away from, even though the AVO got put into place, it was still very hard. Like I had moments where I wanted to reach out, and I had a moment where I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get my phone out. I'm going to write down all the things, and I want people to do this relatively close to a breakup, whether it's the second, the third, the fifth time, whatever it is. When you're just after the breakup, get your phone out and your notes in a private area that no one can read, like lock it. Write down bullet points, all the things that they've said to you, all the things that have hurt you, all the things you've second-guessed. And what I would do in those moments, because we're human and because this is like so subconscious, especially built into me, it's very habitual, I want to go back to him. I'd get my phone out, and even now on the odd occasion, and the list is massive, and I show my clients. I'm very sometimes I show, this is what I did to help me. And the therapy room's quite big, so I'm way over here, they can't read, but I'll go like this and they'll go, oh, and I'll keep scrolling. And because what I'll do is I keep adding to it. So it'll be the first chunk that would come out, and then the days where I'd be like, I just want to text him, or I just want to check up on social media, or I miss him, or whatever, anything, I would get that little locked file out and I would read it and I'd be like, oh, Barbara, and then I would remember a couple of things and I'd add it in there and then I'd leave it. So for me, that was really helpful because it would remind me. I'd romanticize stuff in my head. I'd go back and remember all the good things, in quotation marks. I needed something that would ground me, that would remind me of all the times I didn't feel good, all the times in the relationship I felt so alone.
Yeah. And this all relates to trauma bonding, doesn't it, Barb? And, we will talk about that another time. But when you are having those little moments where you think, I wouldn't mind unblocking them or, texting them, your logical brain knows who and what they are. And when you're having those moments, that's your brain wanting that dopamine fix back by getting the breadcrumbs of their nice treatment. And essentially it's a craving. So I get my clients to do the same thing. Journal, write down what they did to you. And not just what they did, but how they made you feel. And when you're having a craving to look at Instagram, have a sneak peek at their new Target, or drive past their work, all these are normal things. Irrational, given the abuse, but very normal. When you're having that craving, you can essentially, like an alcoholic would call a sponsor. You want to cut that craving in half, cut it off at the knees before it builds and builds and builds and builds until the only thing you can do is call them, because the anxiety is so overwhelming and you just want that horrible withdrawal pain to end. So when you do what you suggest and look at what they did, sometimes or most of the time it's just enough to snap you out of that irrational thinking that calling them might make you feel better.
Yeah, but also the no contact thing, you have to do it. Like, it's the only way, and it doesn't get any easier. It's time, no contact, and the list. I know it's different. You talk about it in your book and stuff about when someone's got children, but I'm just talking about the fact when it's just no children involved, at the no contact, and you can't unblock them, and then and I always say to my clients, and a couple of them, so interesting, it was reflected back at me, right? I have beautiful clients in front of me and I think, God, that was so me once upon a time. I'd say they're going to swing around, they're going to come back, and they roll their eyes at me and go, oh, no, Barbara, and I would never take them back. And I know, because I was in their shoes. I look at them and I just go, I'm right here for you. We're going to work through this together. But I know, because I've been that person in the chair that rolls their eyes when my girlfriends or work colleagues, whatever, go, Barbara, he's an idiot, don't take him back. And I would roll my eyes and go, oh, no. But deep down, I was like, oh, I know when he texts me tonight, I'm going to go around to his house. But I'm not going to tell anyone.
That's it. And that's another thing that makes you feel worse about yourself, like the cigarette smoker perhaps that's given up for 6 months and then say, oh, it'll be all right, and they have that one cigarette. It's not just the fact that they've broken their sobriety, it's the fact that they feel shame in just not being able to do it. And of course, when it's domestic violence, and all these people have said, Barb, stay away, Barb, stay away, Barb, stay away. And you've got, I will never go back to that. And then you do. How embarrassing, how humiliating does that feel for a victim who's got no self-esteem anyway? You don't want to tell those people, which isolates you further, and your abuser banks on that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like,
cycle.
You can't be friends with them. You can't be the cool girlfriend that's okay with him sleeping with other people and then sleeping with you when he feels like it, because he's, you've seen the good side in him, like almost having no boundaries, that yes, he can just swing by and be with me whenever he wants to, but he can be with 3 or 4 other women, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. No, you're not.
No, it's just your brain's way of keeping the drug in your life, and something's better than nothing. Breadcrumbs of that drug are better than having to go through that hideous withdrawal of nothing. And that's what you have to do. It is no contact or grey rock, minimal contact if you share children or work with them.
Let me share something with everyone listening. There's been 2 times when I look at the list of the guys, and surprisingly, one wasn't my ex-husband, but 2 of them in there that I know when we broke up, I was like, I'm never going to get over this person. Remember, I'm smart and intelligent. Been to it doesn't mean anything to do with our intelligence. It's I had this. Literally, honestly, I thought I'm never going to get over this person. And oh my God, the next person that they're going to be with, and it happened with one of them. He got married to her, and they have this nice life. No, it's not. But
no, they didn't.
And almost like, oh my God, I've put all this work into them, so the other person's going to get the better version of them. Yeah. They do not change. But I want to talk to someone that's listening to this right now. And if you're in that moment where you're like, I'm never going to be able to get over them. Life isn't good, but I know what that feels like, and I'm sharing with you that I'm on the other side. It takes time, and it takes time to work with someone like Nova and understand why you've got into these patterns, and you break these patterns, and you get to know yourself, and you heal. You'll just be like, oh, that's interesting. I found that person attractive. You will not find them attractive anymore, I promise you. And that's coming from someone that thought, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to move on from them.
Yeah. Oh, look, thank you so much, Barb, because I know, as you do, that just about every victim thinks that the next person is going to get the nice side of them. That's because you've been left thinking that everything's your fault, you're crazy, the problem's with you, you're messed up. And what if that next person isn't as crazy as me? And the trauma bond still powerful, and it just makes you feel even worse about yourself. And just to reiterate, everyone who's listening, they cannot change because this is their personality, and they don't want to change. They will love bomb the next person. They'll be lovely. That person will think they've met the person of their dreams, and exactly the same thing will happen because they're not a nice person. They are your abuser. They are an abuser to everyone, and it's just a matter of time. You mightn't see it. You might just see those happy snaps on social media with their new soulmate, and that's why you don't look. But it has to happen because the narcissist has to devalue you to make you feel rock bottom, to boost their own ego. It as sure as the sun comes up tomorrow, the next person will experience the same cycle. Yeah,
and can we be nice to, not that you ever reach out to the person. So say if your partner, the narcissist, moves on to someone else and you want to give them a heads up, you never ever do that. But what I want you to do is just have a bit of compassion, because the narcissist only attracts one type of person. It's you in a different body. So I know, going through my narcissist journey with the partners that I had, they did a really good job at me thinking it was the other woman's fault, and me
crazy, still in love with them. Yeah.
And just looking at the other woman, just going, oh God, it's her fault, or just like, and being like, oh, she's way better than me, or she's this or this. No, she's just another person that's exactly like me, but just in a different body that's getting sucked in. So give them the compassion, and that they're actually a really good person. It's the narcissist that's triangulating all of this to make them have power, and for you guys to hate each other so they could swing between the two. So when one picks up on what they're feeling, or have an argument, they go to the other one, and then they go to the other one.
Yeah. Have empathy, but that doesn't mean you lay yourself down for that next target's abuse, because they're taught to hate you. They're conditioned to hate you. So if you're experiencing this terrible treatment from their new target, whilst you know they're going to go through what you do, empathy doesn't mean handing yourself over to them to be abused, and you're allowed to go no contact with them as well. Empathy means, you can put yourself in that shoes, but it doesn't mean laying yourself down to be their victim. They've got their own journey, and that doesn't mean they're entitled to abuse you simply because they don't know yet. So it's about boundaries.
Yeah, and boundaries are more just because people get confused with boundaries and they're like, oh, I've heard the word, but I don't really know what it means.
Yeah.
And it's just making sure, it's knowing that you've got self-worth and self-esteem, and what will you put up with and what will you not put up with, and having these simple conversations with yourself.
Yeah, boundaries are about you. They're not about the other person. And as soon as someone as soon as someone has you explaining why you want to say no, instead of saying yes to their demand, or making you feel guilty because you have values and you like doing things this way, they're telling you they don't respect your boundaries. You don't lower your boundaries because someone doesn't like them, because they're simply your self-care. They're not about the other person. And if they're making you feel guilty or you're worried about what they think, then they're the very people you need them for, because they're telling you, I don't respect your boundaries. So we never lower our boundaries. Healthy people won't ask you to, and toxic people reveal themselves.
Yeah. And then just swinging around, just to give you kind of the final overall of what my transformation and what I did to heal was really, in all honesty, get to know myself and take care of myself and love myself. I didn't love myself when I was with any of these guys. I was wanting them to love me to fill my cup up.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if I didn't love myself. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is I really have worked hard on creating a life of everything I enjoy, being around the people that make me happy, doing what I want to do. And if someone around me doesn't like what I'm doing, oh well. Like it's like I'm not here for other people, I'm here for myself. But genuinely giving myself that love first, not giving myself over, not oversharing, not trusting everyone. Like I was just so
it's not paranoia. This is what we need to get across too. When someone shares with you, like happened to you, and you choose not to, which I advise you not to, that's not paranoia. So if someone's making you feel bad, that's a perfect example. They're saying, hey, I'm toxic, because a healthy person will go, that's okay. You don't overshare with someone you don't know or implicitly trust.
That's right. Yeah. So and have people around you and have support. And when I went through the whole AVO, I was always like, if this happened again. And I made one more promise to myself, and I was like, because he was stalking me, and I was like, okay, he'd always drive past my house and send me all these emails. And I said to myself, okay, if it happens one more time, I'll go to the police. And I was walking the dogs. We've got similar dogs. Mine have passed away, but I had my pug and my Bichon. We were walking around the lake. And I said to myself, if I see him one more time, I'll go to the police. And then no doubt I saw him drive past the lake and hang out the window, honk, honk. And I then took myself down to local police station. And it wasn't until then I had been in the country for a year. I didn't know anyone here in Australia. And I just said to the policeman behind the counter, and I've never been in a police station before, guys, either. This is my first time ever dealing with the law. And I walked in and said, I just feel a bit uneasy. Can I just share something with you? And the guy around the counter was great. He got all the other guys to come around, and he goes, can you repeat what's happening to my work colleagues? And they said, this is not okay. We're sending a car around tonight. We're going to get a statement and we're going to help you through this. So I was like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, I'm probably being silly. So no. Like, and if you go, and I've had a couple of clients this has happened to too. I've said, go to the police. They've gone and they've got shunted, like, we're too busy or nothing's happened, so don't come and talk to us. So on her own accord, she went to another station and got help. So that's what I say, that I had a good dealing and I was like, oh, it's not big enough. But then when I went, I got supported and reassured. And when I was at the courts, the police looked after me and were fantastic. my experience. But I know some of my clients, when they go and talk to the police or any authorities or anyone to try and help them, they may get, oh, nothing's happened. So I want to
make sure you're heard.
Keep going. Go down to the next stage. Ask for the senior sergeant. Ask for a woman. Ask for someone. Keep going. And don't ever not reach out and ask for help. Keep going. That's what I found. I didn't realise the mass of it. And then I got a phone call from all these outreach, and I mean, this was like 7 years ago, but all these women's groups and stuff ringing me who I didn't know, like, do you need help? How can we support you? And I was like, oh my God, thank you. And they're like, Barbara, don't thank us. This is what we're here for. Thank you for being brave enough to come forward. So anyone listening to this, you don't need to get it to it doesn't need to be like really, really, oh my God, I need to go see someone, or I need to reach out. Do it in the early stages. Even like me, I was a bit unsure, but I'll just go and talk to them. I'm so glad that I talked to them and just said, hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Reach out, guys. You can't do this alone. You need help. Someone says, what can I do? You give them a list of 10 things, because that's what people who love do for you. Yeah. Anyway, I think we might have to leave it there, Barb. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I know my listeners out there will really feel validated themselves with their own trauma in listening to you and your story, and they will be so grateful, just like I am. So, guys, for those of you who live in that area, or even if you don't, Barb counsels people worldwide. So I will be tagging her, connecting her to this podcast, so you can reach out to her and listen to her podcast, Studio Chat. And on that note, Barb, I just want to thank you so much for joining us here today. And, very, very grateful for sharing your story. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating a space and a business and a place for people to come to and get the answers that I was once looking for. So thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. I hope you found Barb's story insightful and once again validating in knowing that you're not alone, and that anyone can become a victim. Even therapists can become a victim of narcissistic abuse. Guys, if you would like to hear more, please follow me on my other social media channels. Love chatting to you there. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you never miss another episode. And of course, if you'd like to have a one-on-one counseling session with me, don't forget to send me a line, an email, and I would love to support you one-on-one in your recovery. Okay, until our next episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.